Good morning and welcome to the Lumos Storytime here live from the Lewis County Public Library, the storytime for teens, tweens, and the magical at heart. We're so happy that you could join us this morning for this, our first Lumos Storytime of our summer reading program, Imagine Your Story, Happily Ever Hohenwald. Today, I'm going to be bringing you a short story from a series that was called by the Library of Congress America's Most Loved Homegrown Fairy Tale. That's right, we're going to be reading a story from the world of The Wizard of Oz. L. Frank Baum published the first book in 1900, and it's a little different than the movie you remember. The book originally had the yellow brick road, and Dorothy Hale had silver slippers to walk on. But in 1939, there was a newfangled thing on the silver screen. That's right, color TV was coming in, and so the producers decided to change it up a little and give a little more pizzazz with ruby slippers instead of silver, just to test out the limits of this new technology called Technicolor TV. So, by the time this book became public domain in 1956, it had sold over 3 million copies, which that's quite a lot for that time period. So today I'm going to be reading you the short story, Tick-Tock and the Gnome King, all set in the world of Oz. Tick-Tock and the Gnome King. The Gnome King was unpleasantly angry. He had carelessly bitten his tongue at breakfast and it still hurt. So he roared and he raved and stamped around in his underground palace in a way that rendered him very disagreeable. It so happened that on this unfortunate day, Tick-Tock, the clockwork man, visited the Gnome King to ask a favor. Tick-Tock lived in the land of Oz, and although he was a very active and important person, he was made entirely of metal. Machinery within him, something like the works of clocks, made him move. Other machinery made him talk. Still other machinery made him think. Although so cleverly constructed, the clockwork man was far from perfect. 3 separate keys wound up his motion machinery, his speech works, and his thoughts. One or more of these contrivances was likely to run down at a critical moment, leaving poor Tick-Tock helpless. Also, some of his parts were wearing out through much use, and just now his thought machinery needed repair. The skillful little Wizard of Oz had tinkered with Tick-Tock's thoughts without being able to get them properly regulated, so he had advised the clockwork man to go to the Gnome King and secure a new set of springs which would render his thoughts more elastic and responsive. "Be careful what you say to the Gnome King," warned the wizard. "He has a bad temper, and the least little thing makes him angry." Tick-Tock promised, and the wizard wound his machinery and set him walking in the direction of the Gnome King's dominions, just across the desert from the land of Oz. He ran down just as he reached the entrance to the underground palace, and there Calico, the Gnome King's chief steward, found him and wound him up again. "I want to see the king," said Tick-Tock in his jerky voice. "Well," remarked Calico, "it may be safe for a cast-iron person like you to face His Majesty this morning, but you must announce yourself. For should I show my face inside the jewel-studded cavern where the king is now raving, I'd soon look like a dish of mashed potatoes and be of no further use to anyone." "I'm not afraid," said Tick-Tock. "Then walk in and make yourself at home," answered Calico, and threw open the door to the king's cavern. Tick-Tock promptly walked in and faced the astonished Gnome King, to whom he said, "Good morning. I want 2 springs of steel for my thought works and a new cogwheel for my speech producer. How about it, Your Majesty?" The Gnome King growled a menacing growl, and his eyes were red with rage. "How dare you enter my presence?" he shouted. "I dare anything," said Tick-Tock. "I'm not afraid of a fat gnome." This was true, yet an unwise speech. Had TikTok's thoughts been in good working order, he would have said something else. The angry Gnome King quickly caught up his heavy mace and hurled it straight at TikTok. When it struck the metal man's breast, the force of the blow burst the bolts which had held the plates of his body together, and they clattered to the floor in a score of pieces. Hundreds and hundreds of wheels, pins, cogs, and springs filled the air like a cloud and then rattled like hail upon the floor. Where TikTok had stood was now only a scrap heap, and the Gnome King was so amazed by the terrible effect of his blow that he stared in wonder. His Majesty's anger had quickly cooled. He remembered that the Clockwork Man was a favorite subject of the powerful princess, Ozma of Oz, who would be sure to resent TikTok's ruin. Too bad, he muttered regretfully. I'm really sorry I made junk of the fellow. I didn't know he'd break. You'd better be, remarked Calico, who had now ventured into the room. You'll have a war on your hands when Ozma hears of this, and chances are you will lose your throne and your kingdom. The Gnome King turned pale, for he loved to rule the gnomes and did not know of any other way to earn a living in case Ozma fought and conquered him. Do you think Ozma will be angry? He asked anxiously. I'm sure of it, said Calico, and she has the right to be. You've made scrap iron of her favorite. Oh, the king groaned. Sweep him up and throw the rubbish into the black pit, he commanded. Then he shut himself up in his favorite den and for days would see no one because he was so ashamed of his unreasoning anger and so feared the results of his rash act. Calico swept up the pieces, but he did not throw them into the black pit. Being a clever and skillful mechanic, he determined to fit the pieces together again. No man ever faced a greater puzzle, but it was interesting work, and Calico succeeded. When he found a spring or a wheel worn or imperfect, he made a new one. Within 2 weeks, by working steadily night and day, the chief steward completed his task and put the 3 sets of clockworks and the last rivet into TikTok's body. Then he wound up the motion machinery, and the Clockwork Man walked up and down the room as naturally as ever. Then Calico wound up the ThoughtWorks and the speech regulator and said to TikTok, How do you feel now? Fine, said the Clockwork Man. You have done a very good job, Calico, and saved me from destruction. Much obliged. Don't mention it, replied the chief steward. I quite enjoyed the work. Just then the Gnome King's gong sounded, and Calico rushed away through the jewel-studded cavern and into the den where the king had hidden, leaving the doors ajar. Calico, the king said in a meek voice, I've been shut up here long enough to repent bitterly for the destruction of TikTok. Of course Ozma will have revenge and send an army to fight us, but we must take our medicine. One thing comforts me. TikTok wasn't really a live person. He was only a machine man, and so it wasn't very wicked to stop his clockworks. I couldn't sleep nights at first for worry, but there's no more harm in smashing a machine man than breaking a wax doll. Don't you think so? I'm too humble to think in the presence of your majesty, said Calico. Then get me something to eat, commanded the king, for I'm nearly starved. 2 roasted goats, a barrel of cakes, and 9 mince pies will do me until dinner time. Calico bowed and hurried away to the royal kitchen, forgetting TikTok, who was wandering around in the outer cavern. Suddenly, the Gnome King looked up and saw the Clockwork Man standing before him, and at the sight the monarch's eyes grew big and round, and he fell a-trembling in every limb. Away, grim shadow, he cried. You're not here, you know. You're only a hash of cogwheels and springs lying at the bottom of the black pit. Vanish, thou vision of the demolished TikTok, and leave me in peace, for I have bitterly repented. Then beg my pardon, said TikTok in a gruff voice, for Calico had forgotten to oil the speechworks. But the sound of a voice coming from what he thought a mere vision was too much for the Gnome King's nerves. He gave a yell of fear and rushed from the room. Tick-Tock followed, so the king bolted through the corridors on a swift run and bumped against Calico, who was returning with a tray of things to eat. The sound of the breaking dishes as they struck the floor added to the king's terror, and he yelled again and dashed into the cavern where 1,000 gnomes were working hammering metal. "Look out! Here comes the phantom clockwork men!" screamed the terrified monarch, and every gnome dropped his tools and made a rush from the cavern, knocking over their king in their mad flight and recklessly trampling upon his prostrate fat body. So when Tick-Tock came into the cavern, there was only the Gnome King left, and he was rolling upon the rocky floor, howling for mercy with his eyes fast shut, so that he could not see what he was sure was a dreadful phantom that was coming straight towards him. "It occurs to me," said Tick-Tock calmly, "that your Majesty is acting like a baby. I am not a phantom. A phantom is unreal, while I am the real thing." The king rolled over, sat up, and opened his eyes. "Didn't I smash you to pieces?" he asked in a trembling voice. "Yes," said Tick-Tock. "Then you are nothing but a junk heap, and this form in which you now appear cannot be real." "It is, though," declared Tick-Tock. "Calico picked up my pieces and put me together again, and I am good as new, and perhaps better." "That is true, your Majesty," added Calico, who now made his appearance, "and I hope you will forgive me for mending Tick-Tock. He was quite broken up after you smashed him, and I found it almost as hard a job to match his pieces as to pick turnips from gooseberry bushes. But I did it," he added proudly. "You are forgiven," announced the Gnome King, rising to his feet and drawing a long breath. "I will raise your wages 1 specto a year, and Tick-Tock shall return to the land of Oz loaded with jewels for the Princess Ozma." "That is all right," said Tick-Tock, "but what I want to know is, why did you hit me with your mace?" "Because I was angry," admitted the king. "When I'm angry, I always do something that I'm sorry for afterward. So I have firmly resolved never to be angry again. Unless what, your Majesty?" inquired Calico. "Unless something annoys me," said the Gnome King, and then he went to his treasure chamber to get jewels for the Princess Ozma of Oz. And that's the end of Tick-Tock and the Gnome King. This is a short story from the collection The Little Wizard Stories of Oz by L. Frank Baum. We hope that you enjoy this story and many others. Please give us a like, a comment, and a share. And if there's more than one of you that have been watching this at home, please leave a comment below telling us how many are watching with you right now. And if you haven't read The Wizard of Oz, we highly suggest that you come pick them up and give them a read for yourself. There's the original story plus several more books. We hope that you enjoy and that you'll tune in again next week for another episode of Lumos Storytime. Thank you and have a wonderful weekend.